Look at a husky or a German shepherd, and it is easy to see a wolf staring back. Because of this physical resemblance, we often assume that our living rooms are occupied by tamed versions of the modern gray wolves we see in the wild today. Paleogenomics indicates that modern wolves and dogs are distant cousins. Neither species is ancestral to the other. Instead, they both share a common ancestor that has been extinct for millennia. They both trace their roots back to a robust late Pleistocene canid. This predator hunted across the northern hemisphere over 30,000 years ago, possessing a heavy bone structure and teeth evolved for the processing of large carcasses. That common ancestor eventually vanished, but not before splitting into two distinct lineages. This split set modern wolves and modern dogs on parallel yet completely separate evolutionary journeys. During the last glacial maximum, roughly 27,000 years ago, the planet was locked in deep freeze. It was an era of extreme cold where resources were scarce and survival was an hourly struggle. One population of the ancestral canid doubled down on its role as an apex predator. These animals pushed further into the harsh terrain, adapting as highly specialized hunters of megafauna to become the gray wolves we recognize today. A separate population took a different path. These individuals possessed a slightly lower baseline for fear and aggression, and they began lingering near early human hunter-gatherer camps rather than fleeing from them. By tolerating human presence, these canids gained access to a steady supply of game scraps and food waste. This process of social selection gave them a survival advantage, rewarding the individuals who could safely interact with the humans at the edge of the fire. Staying in the frozen wild versus stepping closer to the human camp ignited an evolutionary chain reaction, permanently splitting the ancestral population into two different species. The wild wolf path required immense physical bulk, deep reservoirs of stamina, and a large cranial capacity to navigate the Pleistocene wilderness. Meanwhile, the canids following human camps experienced what researchers call domestication syndrome. When an animal is naturally selected for tameness, it triggers a profound and irreversible cascade of physical mutations. This diagram shows a canine embryo focusing on what biologists call neural crest cells. These cells migrate to form the skeleton, sensory organs, and adrenal glands governing stress. Selecting for tameness alters their function. That cellular shift creates a ripple effect across the animal's anatomy, beginning with a noticeable shortening of the snout. Because scavenging requires less crushing power than wild hunting, there is a subsequent reduction in overall tooth size. A loss of cartilage rigidity causes the previously upright ears to droop and flop over. The uniform camouflage of a predator breaks down, resulting in the irregular color patches often seen in domestic breeds. Most significantly, domestic life leads to a reduction in overall brain size compared to wild ancestors. Biologists call this collection of traits neoteny. It is the retention of juvenile, puppy-like features even after the animal reaches adulthood. The dog traded the lethal physical tools of an apex predator for an anatomy that triggers human empathy, ensuring their care within our society. In the wild, natural wolf packs are cooperative family units led by a breeding pair, relying on kinship rather than violent dominance to maintain order. Because they rely on one another for every meal, wolves developed sophisticated behaviors for making peace and resolving conflicts to preserve pack harmony. Domestic dogs shifted their survival reliance from canines to humans, altering their social interactions. Even feral dogs tend to sleep and move in loose associations rather than the tight family groups seen in wolves. This shift is written into their DNA. Researchers identified structural variants in dog genes associated with hypersociability, a mutation that physically wires them for intense social interaction. This genetic shift granted dogs the distinct ability to read human eye contact and follow our pointing gestures to solve tasks, a cognitive leap that human-reared wolves generally cannot replicate. The wolf evolved to be the ultimate teammate for its own kind. The dog rewired its social intelligence to make humanity its true pack. The wild wolf maintains a strictly carnivorous metabolism, optimized for digesting raw protein of large prey. But as human societies shifted toward agriculture roughly 9,000 years ago, the environment around human settlements became rich in cultivated grains and starches. This chart shows the genetic divergence in digestion. While the wolf carries only 2 copies of the gene responsible for processing starch, the dog genome multiplied that gene into dozens of copies. This metabolic mutation meant that dogs didn't just adapt to live near us, they evolved to eat exactly what we eat, securing their survival alongside the rise of agriculture. Canid evolution is a landscape with 2 distinct fitness peaks, the wolf, tuned for the wilderness, and the dog, tuned for human society. A hybrid caught in the dark valley between lacks wild instincts for the forest and the hypersociability needed for a home. Thousands of years of specialized mutations have made domestication a one-way street. The biological gap is now so wide that the dog has crossed an evolutionary point of no return. The domestic dog represents a distinct evolutionary success, having diversified into a vast array of forms while hardwiring its social intelligence to the human frequency. The wild wolf exists as a separate masterpiece, a family-oriented survivor refined by the Pleistocene into a model of predatory efficiency. Both species are perfect reflections of the worlds they chose to inhabit. One remains the ruler of the wildest places on Earth, while the other has forever claimed the space beside our fires.